Hello, welcome. It's yet another episode of A Star to Steer Her By, your favorite Star Trek watching podcast.
Woo!
This week it's episode 368.
Woo!
Woo-hoo-hoo. And this week we are covering the final of the Kelvin movies. For now, who knows? They've been putting off doing another movie for a freaking decade now, son of a bitch. Because this one is Star Trek Beyond, in which we are trekking beyond things. And since we've been doing so much trekking beyond all the things, you already know that this is Ames.
And this is Caitlin.
And this is Jake.
And this is Chris Lassie.
Oh, we're up. Our Lassie counter has started now. We're at 1.
Say, everybody drink.
Bing.
It's going to be a lot of Lassies this week.
What are we
Ooh,
drinking?
drink.
Scotch or vodka?
Both.
Scotchka.
Mixed
Yes.
together.
Oh,
Romulan.
Scotchka. Oh my god.
Romulan
Or
ale.
Votch.
Votch. Votch sounds
Votch
pretty
sounds
wretched.
horrible. Experience
I
Beach.
say Votch definitely
Experience
sounds
Votch.
like Votch
A
sounds like
venereal disease?
a one-off Star Trek villain.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Krall could have been called Votch. Fucking Nero could have been called Votch. Khan could have been called John Harrison.
Or
The
Votch.
Votch. This changes everything.
So I'm going to launch on in. So I have a theme this week, as I frequently do.
Woohoo!
And the theme is Quick Change, the movie. A film about people changing into new uniforms when they have higher priorities.
I mean, there is actually a movie called Quick Change starring Bill Murray.
What is it about?
It's about a bank robbery.
Oh, I get it. That's a joke. It's a good joke.
Yeah.
But really the theme this week is people are better together. If you remember last week, I was super struggling with whatever the fuck the theme of Into Darkness was, because there kind of isn't one.
Right,
This
so is
movie's
the
got
movie.
one. Good job, movie. You've passed the pass-fail course of keeping to a fucking theme. All right, let's launch in. Let me show you how a good synopsis is done. I've got this typed up. Here we go. Star Trek Beyond. It's been 3 years since Into Darkness, both in real life and in universe. And Kirk is feeling about as jaded as other Kirk was in Wrath of Khan. But this isn't going to be Wrath of Khan again this time. Hooray! So we're going to Starbase Yorktown, which is super pretty. And we intercept this distress call from this chick Kalara who wants us to go save her people or something or other. Don't question it. This is a job for the Enterprise. But oh god, the Enterprise gets attacked hard by these swarm ships that destroy it utterly. And most of the crew gets captured, and only our main heroes make it to the planet. It's called Altamid, evidently, in their little escapee pods. Except Uhura and Sulu, who are in the hands of Krall, who is our big villain of the week. And he really wants to get his hands on this MacGuffin-y thing that got established in the teaser. Good job establishing things in the teaser. Meanwhile, everybody who's on Altamid is separated from each other, so we do all these little individual storylines that we'll talk about in the discussion and not right now. And they all meet up in the wreckage of the USS Franklin. Guys, this is a ship that went missing over 100 years ago. I'm assuming this was before Enterprise? Question marks. We'll get to it.
Shortly after, in theory, but we'll get to it later.
Well, they said it was the first Warp 4 ship, and since
That's
Enterprise was the first Warp 5 ship.
That's a problem. We'll get to that, though.
We'll get to that. Neat. Anyway, we're going to mount a rescue of all the captured crew just after Krall finds the MacGuffin, which turns out to be a fucking doomsday weapon, because of course it does. And he wants to go attack the fuck out of Yorktown. For reasons. You get him, Krall. Quick, let's fix the Franklin in 20 minutes. Get him, Scotty. And it's also going to give Sulu something to do because he's going to go fly the Franklin now. And good job, Sulu. With the help of our new best friend, Jayla, who I like, we figure out how to jam the swarm ship's signal with classical music. And Uhura pieces together that Krall is really, dun dun dun, Captain Balthazar Edison, who was the captain of the Franklin.
Never suspected Balthazar Edison as being a bad guy.
That fucking bad guy. And he's apparently still alive, because he's been sucking life force from people, and he super hates the Federation because he really didn't like doing teamwork exercises or something.
Fair.
So Edison or Krall, I'm gonna call him Krall because the Edison reveal was just too much for me, guys.
Yeah.
Take a breath, Ames.
Yeah, even though all the swarm ships have gotten destroyed by Thing. Krall himself has made it into this ventilation network of the Yorktown, and he's gonna deploy the weapon that will destroy a whole lot of things. But Kirk is there to punch him a lot until they just finny tube that fucker out into space, and he saves the day.
And they didn't even go to yellow alert first.
Mm.
Typical.
Typical. You gotta put your coffee right down on that button, guys. So turns out teamwork does make the dream work, and Kirk decides he does like being a captain after all. And even Spock learns that he wants to stick around in Starfleet after he had kind of a brief moment where he learned that Nimoy Spock died, and maybe he should be involved in population efforts for Vulcan, and who knows, fuck that. Spock hearts bones forever, and Kirk hearts this flashy new Enterprise he gets, that surely he'll have many more adventures in. The end? Probably the end. I don't think they're gonna make another movie.
I mean,
It's too bad, you know?
I mean, here's the thing. If the pattern holds, what they will do is make the same movie again. Because we have just watched the same movie 3 times in a row.
Explain.
A dude who wants revenge for some shit.
I mean, if we're talking about that, then we've watched the same movie 12 times in a row.
No, because, okay, maybe it's not the same movie, but it's the same fucking villain every time. Like, hey guys, which Kelvin version of Khan is your favorite? Romulan Khan? Classic flavor Khan? Or shape-shifting Idris Elba Khan? Well,
but again,
the answer is
that's not classic flavor
here's the
Khan.
same thing. Like that, you could say the same thing about Shinzon. You could say the same thing about Ruafo. You could say the same thing about...
Ruafo wasn't. Well, I guess he was a little revenge, wasn't he?
He was totally
Damn it.
revenge.
Damn it.
Yeah.
Fuck.
Yeah,
I'm thinking Doherty. Doherty actually had a different fucking
Doherty's
reason.
motivation was because he's a dickhead.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ruafo was just another fucking con.
Yeah, no, they've ran out of ideas of how to make Star Trek movies a long time ago. But I would say
before
that
they even started, really.
with the motion picture...
Yeah, V'ger was the most new and different type of thing.
Well, admittedly, even V'ger was sort of a variation on Nomad.
That's fine. It wasn't looking for revenge.
Yeah.
It was looking for self-definition, which is cool.
Yeah, Khan wanted revenge, but it was Wrath of Khan, so it's fine.
It's in the name.
3...
He wanted revenge, and all he got was wrath.
3 was...
Krug.
a mix of looking for Spock, and Krug wants a super weapon because he just doesn't like the Federation, but it's not necessarily wrath per se. 4, it's a probe that doesn't understand it's kind of fucking shit up.
And to be
5,
fair, the probe isn't even the villain of 4.
No,
the probe is the frame.
Mankind is clearly the villain of 4
and
because he extinctified all the whales.
That guy that called Chekhov a retard. He was the villain.
Wow, he sucks. Well, he's a cop, so yeah.
5 again, Jesus Christ, I'm blanking on his name. Lawrence Luckinbill. Cybok isn't. He's looking for God. He does some bad stuff to get there, but he's not out for revenge. He's not out to kill anybody.
But God is.
6 is a conspiracy of people who are afraid of change. Really, aside from 2, none of the original 6 movies are about vengeance.
Are you saying that the 3rd movie isn't about vengeance? Because isn't What's-His-Ass out for vengeance?
Who?
Or did we just cover this?
Yeah, no, Krug.
I don't know. Christopher Lloyd Webber. Andrew Lloyd Webber, I almost said. Christopher Lloyd.
Krug just dislikes the Federation because he's a Klingon and they don't like each other, and he figures Genesis will be a useful weapon.
And he wants revenge for the peaceful way of life that everyone's brought around?
No, he just doesn't like the Federation.
Yeah,
fine.
he just wants a super weapon.
Yeah.
I was just being silly.
And then when you look even at the TNG films, Malcolm McDowell just wants to get back to the Nexus and doesn't care.
Yeah, he's just a junkie.
Yeah, he's just an asshole. 7. First Contact, is that Wrath? It's just, if anyone's wrathful, it's actually Picard.
Picard, yeah.
But yeah,
that's just the Borg doing Borg shit. I mean, in a sense, I guess the Borg are trying to avenge, but it's not really for the purpose of vengeance. It's for the purpose of wiping out their biggest enemy.
Yeah, I mean, their thing is just a continuation of their master plan to try and assimilate everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, here's what I'm going to say then. In terms of all the movie villains, Krall is possibly the weakest of all
it's especially
of them.
because
even Whale Probe.
They didn't And I want to preface this by saying that I really like this movie.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think the glaring weak point of this movie is Crawl and the fact that we don't know until the final act what his deal is. And even then, his motivation is still very unclear.
Deeply.
Like, it's just like he's like, it's not even vengeance so much as
bitterness.
Yeah, like, oh, I didn't want to be a captain, but I was pushed into it because Starfleet went all pacifist on me. And
we're friends with the Xindi now.
And then I got stranded on a planet for 100 and some odd years, and I'm just bitter about it. So now I'm going to go show Starfleet how dangerous the galaxy is by killing a bunch of people. I don't fucking know.
Yeah, it's a little weak, but that was the other thing that made him like Khan. I forgot the being stranded on a world and blaming Starfleet for it.
Yeah, but Khan legit has a reason to blame Starfleet. Starfleet is the one that left him on the planet. Starfleet assumed Balthazar, whatever his name was, died.
Well, are we talking about original Khan or
original?
New Khan.
Original. Yeah. Well, and they even say it's easy to miss. I don't think I ever noticed it before watching it this time. But Spock even says, like, for a ship that old to be this far out, they probably fell through a wormhole or something to get there. So, like, Starfleet couldn't have found them if they wanted back then.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but for all we know from, like, maybe they don't know that they're that far. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, they must at this point because they've used Starfleet's own probes that they've sent into this nebula as, like, a relays to spy on Starfleet. That's how they knew about how Enterprise had the secret weapon that they wanted, which was like, what a great coincidence. Like, they're on this planet that's in this nebula. The nebula happens to be right next to Yorktown, which happens to be where Kirk happens to go after getting this thing that Balthazar just happened to need. The plot is quite weak. Yeah. Which is why I don't think we should spend too much time on it, because it's like
that's the whole
worst
point
part
of the movie.
No, I feel like the movie, like the plot of the movie is not really where its strengths are. I think its strengths are in, the character work,
remembering we have a whole cast.
Yeah, exactly. I think, more so than the other films, this movie really is, using the full ensemble.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Well,
to varying extents. Like, Sulu doesn't get a ton to do, but he does get something. And same with Uhura.
I did love the scene where, it's like, oh, do you think you can crash the Franklin over this very convenient fucking cliff that it happens to be on and not kill us all? And he's like, maybe, we'll find out.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of credit has to go to, the fact that Simon Pegg, unlike J.J. Abrams, actually likes Star Trek.
Yeah, and he looked things up. That's
right. I forgot that he took over at this point. Yes.
Well, he's
also way better.
He wrote it. Justin Lin, the Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift director, directed.
Yeah.
Well, obviously the best of the Fast and the. I have no idea. I haven't seen any of those movies.
I haven't seen any of them either.
I mean,
but if I was going to see one, I would want to see Tokyo Drift. I mean, that one appealed to me.
Yeah.
From its advertisements.
It has the least punny fucking stupid name, so let's go with that.
I mean, also, though, again, I don't know much about Justin Lin outside of that and this, but he seems to like Star Trek more than J.J. Abrams.
Oh, definitely. He was a big Trekkie, he said.
Was
he named the Franklin after his dad because the two of them used to watch Star Trek together.
No.
The Franklin.
I love that.
Oh, that's funny.
Which is very sweet, because it's not like it's over the
really sweet.
beating you over the head with a reference or anything.
Well,
and I will say
plausible.
other things, like, speaking of beating over the head with references, that's another thing I appreciated. That's another thing I kind of appreciated in comparison, in particular to Into Darkness.
Into Darkness, that's the one.
Where, like, literally every fucking reference was like, here's the reference we're making. Yeah. Understand it. This time the references are much more subtle, and they're still, and they're like things that, as a Star Trek fan, I can be like, oh yeah, look at that, they did that.
I don't know. I could have done without "I ripped my shirt again." What is this, a Lower Decks episode?
No, even that is fine. Like,
Wow, sorry.
I thought the reference was fine. I thought having to point it out was silly.
That's what it is, yes. If you point it out, it feels like Lower Decks, because that's all they do is, in case someone doesn't realize there's a reference here, we're going to make sure you know you're missing out on the reference.
But also...
No, I'm with you on that.
Galaxy Quest already had, I see you managed to get your shirt off again.
But that's a comedy, Chris. That's a comedy movie.
No, but I mean, that's what I mean. They beat them to it.
Yeah, and did it better.
Yeah, Galaxy Quest already made the joke.
I believe Tim is experiencing... acting.
Love it.
Also, R.I.P., dude. Alan Rickman was a god.
This admittedly causes part of the confusion of the Franklin, but her registry number is Leonard Nimoy's birthday.
Yeah, well, I also think...
nice.
So here's my theory on that. So, indisputably, I would say, from what we're told in this film, that ship predates NX-01.
It has to. That's the only way it makes sense.
Because it's a Warp Force ship, and we're also told, and it also just, I don't know. I believe that is a pre-Enterprise ship. However, because we know that the Enterprise was the first in the NX series of registry numbers, it's established that the reason that Edison was the captain of the Franklin was because he was previously a Mako.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And then they disbanded the Makos when the Federation was founded. And we're like, okay, we're going to put all the high-ranking Makos into Starfleet positions and just make them captains, which obviously a bad idea. So that's how he ended up being the captain. My guess is
and this movie knows it's a bad idea.
Is that the Franklin existed, was a ship, and then was rechristened, or, when Starfleet became part of the Federation, they're like, okay, we have all these old ships. We don't want to toss them in the trash. Let's just, we'll give them registry numbers, and
this is where USS comes from.
And that's why it's also NX, and that's why it has a higher registry number, than Enterprise, because it's
accept this.
We're like, okay, it's NX 326 or whatever it was. Like, that's the next one of all these ships that we drafted into Starfleet now.
Yeah, and she also seems to be significantly smaller than Enterprise.
Yeah, and they also, they mentioned how, this transporter wasn't designed for people. Yeah. We know the one on Enterprise was.
Ish.
So,
well, it was approved for people.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that basically solves it, yeah.
Yeah, and, the warp drive, because it's just such a... They could have been it's the first Warp 6 ship if they really wanted to make it after Enterprise, because it wouldn't have mattered, because it's not like the speed of the ship ever came up other than that moment.
Yeah.
And they sure as shit got to Yorktown quick, because...
Well, okay, I thought of that. I'll give them this. We just see everyone taking off, and then they show everyone arriving at Yorktown. We don't know how much time elapsed there.
That's true, yeah.
So I would say this, from what little we see, there's maybe a better understanding of scale than JJ. Certainly, elevators aren't just instantaneous. They actually have time to have, an awkward chat on the turbo lift.
Yeah.
I thought it was nice that this director had a better understanding of, 3D, in a anti-grav whatever situation, just based on the city of Yorktown or whatever.
I love that, yeah.
Rather than as opposed to J.J. Abrams, who has no fucking clue apparently.
I don't.
Yeah, that was cool. When the moment when they're he found the gravity stream by looking at how the glass was falling.
Yeah, and that's that whole bit there. That's very Travis's 0 point or whatever on Enterprise.
Yeah.
Oh, that thing. Yeah. I do. I appreciated that gravity kind of scene on Yorktown more than we had even more weird gravity on the Enterprise when it was crashing down onto the planet. And I feel like we didn't need both because we already had weird gravity shit and Into Darkness that I found distracting.
Yeah. Well, I feel with
the gravity on Yorktown was really cool to watch.
It was fun, yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes sense in world, too, which, thank God.
I always appreciated, there's almost a sense of scale with this film. I've complained before about how in a lot of science fiction, Star Wars, but Star Trek's guilty too, of everything is so big that after a while, nothing seems big.
But all the swarm ships are small, and I like them.
Yeah, and, they fuck up Enterprise, and then Enterprise, which has always seemed pretty fucking large in these movies, putters up to Yorktown and, fits in an underground garage there, and the shot of it, you can see it under the river or whatever. I always loved that shot. It just looked cool.
But to be fair, Yorktown is ridiculous.
Oh, in what way?
It's
in the best way.
It's just so fucking huge. We've seen what space stations look like in TNG times, right? They look like either the mushroom tip at Earth, the star base or whatever they call it, starbase. What I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, the main starbase, the one that we always see with the space doors and everything, or they look like Regula 1 because that's the prop that they had. The idea that there's a starbase that is this scale at this time in this part of the country, all contained within your kitchen.
Oh, can I see
is
it?
ridiculous.
Thanks to Justin Lin, yes.
It's just I don't know. I just find it so goofy that we have this space station, and I'm not angry about it. It's a thing that's in the movie, and it's stupid. But I'm like, okay, whatever.
I'm gonna say it's Xindi technology or Sulaban technology or something insane.
They converted one of the spheres into this thing.
There it is.
Oh, that's good.
It's nice to imagine that maybe things more like this also exist in the Prime universe, because we know the real reason all the star bases are just Space Dock and Regula 1 is because that's what they had in the closet and shrug.
And they didn't have this level of CGI yet, and it's impressive, so.
Yeah, there's definitely...
But I don't even know if they would have... this seems to me like something that would have been introduced in, Voyager as some, oh my god, look at this lost thing. This
but they didn't have this budget.
Yeah, because, this thing makes the fucking, the Voth city ship look like a puny piece of shit.
Well, it's one thing, though, you see a ship that big, what the fuck? This is still a stationary object, which maybe you're more well, yeah, you don't have to make engines for this thing. So it can still be, a city ship can still be impressive, even if you own something like this, because this isn't supposed to move.
Yeah. And it's also, why is it glass? Why is it made out of glass?
It's transparent aluminum.
Fair.
There's definitely shades of the Mass Effect Citadel in there, too. Because with that, it's this massive space station with, these fins that kind of all point out at one another, and they all have cities on them. So, in theory, you could, in this, be in one part of the city, look up, and see the other part of the city, coming down at you.
And is the whole sphere filled with atmosphere? That just seems very wasteful.
Well, yes, it's an atmosphere, don't you see?
Because, they're just floating around out there. Or is it, pockets of atmosphere close to the surfaces?
It's probably that, but I don't know.
I don't know. It's not established, but we don't know.
Yeah, you don't need to know. It doesn't really come up.
But yeah. So I wasn't angry about Yorktown. Did you notice that Yorktown itself was a reference to the original Gene Roddenberry's original planned name for the ship in Star Trek?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
You wanted to call it the Yorktown?
A nice touch.
Yeah. Wasn't there eventually a Yorktown in Star Trek somewhere? They do
reference. I think Yorktown does get referenced as just another ship.
Yeah.
At some point, maybe in the Ultimate Computer or something like that.
So I feel like it's one of those names they reuse a lot. So if you look on Memory Alpha, there's been 17 Yorktowns.
Yeah. Yeah. The name does get dropped a lot as what I assume is supposed to be a reference to Roddenberry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do also like the Yorktown uniforms. I think they're very striking. But they look a little too similar to the Franklin uniforms, which are supposed to be an entirely different era.
Well, the Franklin uniform looked a lot like the Enterprise
like a jumpsuit
uniform, which I thought was a nice touch, Yeah,
I think the color schemes were just which one are they in? Oh, it's that one. I get it now. Okay, good.
Yeah, they're sort of, I guess they're survival outfit that Kirk and Chekhov spend most of the film in is just reminded me a lot of the Discovery uniforms of all things, because they were just blue with
big shoulder
color.
Yeah. Did they just have those things in the escape pods? Was that the idea?
I think so.
I think they because it looked like Kirk was unpacking a survival kit that had a phaser and a tricorder.
Yeah, I like that we see Chekhov put it on so that you can establish this is the quick change that we get to see, because every so often like I said, this is quick change of the movie in which suddenly we have Chekhov and Kirk in a new jacket. Scotty finds a leather coat somewhere and looks fly as hell.
Yeah.
I guess
Spock,
he needs
for
like
no
whoever
reason,
owns the
changes
motorcycle.
clothes.
Yeah. Well,
was
Spock
literally-
changes clothes because his shirt got destroyed because he got stabbed.
Yeah. Like
Like,
there was
Spock's
literally a
change makes
shot
sense.
where every character was in a different costume, and it was like, what are we looking at?
So it's really funny. There's this old Doctor Who serial where clearly the person that was supposed to like do continuity between set shooting days and location shooting days fucked up because they're like, quick, we have to get to this location immediately. It's a crisis. They're in completely different costumes when they're in the next scene. Like, so the guy went, quick, now! And then cut to black. Wait, let's all change. And it's not like subtle differences. It is completely different costumes. It's not like, Scotty put on a jacket he found. It's Spock in his jumpsuit. It's hilarious.
I also thought this was the first time because normally you're so used to the women's uniforms being the short skirt and all this shit. But good lord, when poor Uhura is climbing around in rubble in her little skirt, I'm like, oh no, why? No, bad.
Yeah, and they did have a uniform with trousers for women in this one. Mm-hmm. So it would have been nice if they'd let her.
And this is the new one.
With the sleeves.
Because she actually has sleeves now. But nope, you still have to climb around like you're in a tiny mini skirt over rocks and shit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how much the Uhura character gets sidelined throughout this series. Like in the 2009 in the original film, like she's like the second or third biggest character, and pretty much it's Kirk, Spock, and Uhura are like the ones we care about.
They're on the poster, yeah.
Yeah, and then in the second movie, okay, she's a little less involved. She still has a few scenes that are big. She gets to fight with the Klingons and talk to the Klingons. And then in this one, she's there and she does things, but she's down at like Sulu level. I
mean, something had to be done to make way for the fact that they suddenly gave Chekhov a lot to do.
Which is good. I like that Chekhov got a lot to do. I like that Scotty got more to do, and that's probably because Simon Pegg wrote the script.
Yeah.
Good to be
I adored that McCoy suddenly had actual shit to do, and I love him so much.
Yeah, he's great in this one. They really got him.
Yeah. They knew. They understood the Spock-McCoy dynamic.
I just wish that Billy Butcher could do the accent better. But he's
the
fine.
Southern accent?
Carl Urban?
Yeah, he doesn't. Yeah, it seems like Carl Urban has like an American accent that he can do. But he doesn't really. It's kind of like it's probably the equivalent of like an American actor doing a British accent when like an actual Brit could be like that's like a nondescript. That could be.
That's
from
a
anywhere.
really bad Liverpudlian accent.
We all know the best American fake Brit is Ames boy. Lon Suter, because he famously never dropped the accent while filming Lord of the Rings. And when it was over, he did, and people were like, wait, you're American?
Oh, Brad Dourif, you're a joy.
Brad Dourif. Yeah, I literally just brought that up because I know Ames loves a Brad Dourif story.
I do love a Brad Dourif.
Yeah,
See, now all I can think of is Dune.
Where he's just a weird guy.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyway, I think Carl Urban does he nails the character of Bones. I just wish he nailed the accent, but it's okay.
Yeah, and finally I think they nailed the writing of Bones, because the first two movies, he was there for quips, and that was
right, exactly. He was just there to be like, damn it, Jim, are you out of your Vulcan mind? Haha, I'm a doctor.
Here's some random idiom. Thanks, Bones. But in this one, like, he's got a great scene with Kirk at the beginning, which is very in character.
Yeah, it was
reminiscent
of the birthday scene in Star Trek 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
When he gives Kirk the glasses.
Well, and he even says to him, like, here's to good eyesight or whatever.
And a full head of hair.
And a full head of hair.
I wonder who that's a reference to. That one I'm good with. Yeah. I think what was good, though, is like, because obviously Pine is still quite young here, so his hang-up isn't that
well, he's about to turn 30, can you believe it?
His hang-up isn't that he's getting old, it's that he has now officially outlived his father.
Yeah, and that's fascinating.
And also he's bored with space.
Yeah.
Which I think is interesting, and the turn for him is, oh, now we know how to navigate this this region of space that we couldn't
the
previously
nebula.
navigate. So like, oh, okay, suddenly that's exciting to me again. Like, we're not just doing the milk runs anymore.
It was so nice for Kirk to be a person. Like,
Yeah.
not once in this film does he pass by a pretty woman and go, Jim Kirk.
Ass
Yeah.
tap.
Seriously.
Yeah, they really did fix Kirk
So
in
much.
this one.
His hair
And
looks worse.
They fixed Spock
Yeah, I
too.
agree
Like
on the
Spock,
hair.
Spock doesn't go on any like fucking like he's emotional. We see the types of emotions that we would expect from Spock, where he's like, he's clearly affected by the death of himself, but we don't see him like he's not just angry all the time. And
he doesn't punch anybody over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like the one time he really kind of like lets loose is, he's just lost a lot of blood. So his self-control's probably down a little.
Plus,
I
he
do
loves
love
Bones so
that
much.
scene. I love when he laughs and Bones is like, "You're delirious."
I
That's what
love it.
that's
love
what I was
that.
referring to.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, they're the ship
that
that
whole
this
scene
franchise
is
needs.
wonderful.
One thing I was unclear about. So Bones and Spock are riding in the elevator when the elevator shaft gets blown up by the swarm. And then they just happen to, they're still in the elevator when they crash into one of the swarm ships.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're somehow able to transfer from the elevator into the swarm ship.
Yeah, it doesn't make a ton
I
of
missed
sense.
this entirely.
Like somehow, like, because I'm like, are they in an escape pod? No, they're just in the elevator.
Yeah, it
What?
literally wasn't until Bones gets into another one of those swarm ships at the end when they're at Yorktown that I realized that's what that was supposed to have been.
Yeah, it's a little weird. Also, apparently turbo lifts are airtight.
Yeah, apparently.
Oh, weird, yeah.
Well, that
No.
I wouldn't necessarily. You don't think so?
No.
I would say, okay, here's a reason to make them
I think they
airtight.
might be.
'Cause then
Okay,
don't,
thank you,
because
Jake,
then
get
you
it.
don't,
Then you can fart in there.
if you have a hull breach in the elevator shaft,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
you can seal it,
Yeah, and your fart doesn't get out.
and your fart doesn't get out.
There you go.
I'll give you that.
Sure. Well, also,
The thing about the farts or
apparently
the thing about the breach?
torpedoes are also airtight. Well, I mean, I guess he did have to wear like a mask. I'm talking about Scotty, because he escaped not in an escape pod, but in a torpedo.
That's what he. God damn it!
Yeah.
I missed all these little details in the action.
It was the same. It was the same like design of torpedo that Khan's people were in.
Yeah.
That's the only way I realized what it was.
Yeah, I imagine that only worked because he was immediately shot into the atmosphere. Because I don't imagine there's much in the way of thermal insulation either.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Like
and
a
how
torpedo.
I entirely missed we were at a planet because, last I knew, we're being attacked in this nebula. And then suddenly Scotty shoots himself at a planet. I was like, where did that thing come from?
They were already out of the nebula at
I
the
missed
planet.
this. There's a lot going
they got
on.
attacked. Yeah. Yeah, and another thing that I really liked about this film is that somebody on the writing staff was finally like, why doesn't anybody ever just cut the throat of these ships that have an obvious fucking vulnerability?
Smart crawl.
Like at first, they take out the nacelles by destroying the pylons, which obvious.
Yep.
Now they can't get away, and then they're like, cut the throat. Obviously.
It's funny too because I forget if I talked about this at the time, but when I was a kid, I had an art book for like the concept art for Star Trek First Contact. And the guy who designed the Sovereign class even said, like, the first thing they always hit in the old movies was the neck.
Yeah.
I'm getting rid of the neck.
Smart.
It's a bad idea. But this is the first one where they went as far as actually severing it completely.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was cool. It looked cool. I thought the ship crashing looked cool. I thought the ship getting just like obliterated by the swarm looked cool.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the idea of the swarm itself was pretty cool.
Yeah.
How many of those ships were manned, or was it a different class that was
so?
manned?
There was a throwaway line because we know that the crew of the Franklin was only like 100 or something. Like it wasn't very big.
Yeah.
And obviously there were hundreds of thousands of these swarm ships. But Krall says, that his crew and they had a robot or like like it's implied. I think I don't know if he says robot, but like an autonomous mining
shipbuilder
people. So I think most of the soldiers that we see that are in the armor, I think those are pretty much all automatons. I don't think they're people.
Oh, I didn't think of that.
I didn't catch that. What I did, because the other thing too is like whatever the Franklin's crew was in that last log of his they listened to, only 3 are left.
Yeah,
and he presumably is one
of them. I assume is his little toady that's Jayla.
Yeah,
Manus, right?
Who is he still alive? I don't think they show him getting killed or anything. He might still be there.
That's fine.
Didn't she like throw him off the top of that huge building?
No,
I don't know how he would have.
Yeah, but he just fell on his ass. He's probably fine.
Yeah, I think they show him even getting up. Like, they kind of forgot about him.
They did.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that they almost forgot about, Jayla's arc, because they do make sure to give Jayla an arc, because, she's a very cool character.
She is.
And considering they sidelined Horus so much, they at least let her do stuff. But I guess that when they're first leaving that planet that she's been on for however fucking long, they realized, we have to add in this scene. There's a quick little add-in scene of just her face reacting to leaving the planet, because they didn't originally think to include that, and they realized smartly, like, we have to remember this character exists.
And honestly, in a way, I'm almost glad I'm glad they remembered, but I'm also kind of glad they forgot, because...
So they didn't over-egg it?
Yeah, it was just like, that was almost enough. Her just looking and just her expression, and it's like, that's good, because I feel like there's a risk of really overdoing it otherwise.
Yeah, making it a whole conversation with Montgomery Scotty, which is cute,
Flossy.
and I love them together.
Oh, they're the best, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry, I just had a Jayla thing that I wanted to point out that I noticed that I thought was adorable. So, when Scotty and Jayla encounter Kirk and Chekhov, Scotty's like, oh, that little fella there is Chekhov, and that handsome, big, masculine, manly devil who I'd allow to bend me over the con is James T. Kirk. And then she shoots them down, and she approaches Chekhov and says, you're safe now, James T. So Jayla, I think, thought that Chekhov was a hot piece of ass. Am I wrong? Am I remembering this incorrectly?
I don't know.
Sure that's what happened.
But I now choose to accept that headcanon.
It's just, I just thought it was a nice subversion of expectations.
It's because Kirk doesn't look as good with that hair.
And a good choice. Chekhov is adorable.
Oh, he's
I prefer his hair in this one.
I don't think...
I
thought it didn't look great, but I'm not sure if, I think it's a bad haircut, or, like you just said, Ames, if it's just bad for him, I don't know.
Well, I like it better than the haircut they had him in the first 2 pictures.
So... stupid things.
Yay, my favorite.
That I thought were really stupid about this movie. Motorcycle scene.
No, the motorcycle scene is so fun.
I tried to give it the benefit of the doubt, this movie, and I still can't stand the motorcycle scene.
Okay, all right, so for some reason, there's a motorcycle on the Franklin. Like, somebody on the Franklin...
Come on. For some reason, there was a fucking beagle on the Enterprise. These human beings are sentimental, weird pricks.
But, how often... Okay, on a starship, having a dog, it's like, okay, you have a companion. It's your... you don't want to leave your dog at home for your prolonged space flight. What possible use is there...
ride around the hallways?
Jake, I believe that this movie has answered your question.
I mean, but again, they established that it's not like they could have ever landed the Franklin on a planet, so they would have had to have either beamed down the motorcycle or taken it down in a shuttle pod, just so... I'm going to assume that it's Edison's personal motorcycle. And, the rest of the crew just is like, why is this fucking asshole making us haul around his goddamn motorcycle everywhere?
Well, and especially, it's one thing to bring a beagle. It's another, especially on an older, smaller ship. Let's give a good chunk of space over to this fucking thing.
Yeah, and
unless it was some
cargo. It was stuffed discreetly in the corner. It was barely taking up any room. I'm not actually arguing that it makes sense to have it there, but saying it takes up a lot of space on a fucking starship, I don't buy that.
She's very small starship, although to be fair, they do fit the entire Enterprise crew.
Well, everyone that's left, and it's probably not a lot.
And it's only once they remove that motorcycle that they fit everybody.
That's true. They found the room.
Oh, right. Thank God.
Here's the thing I'm going to say about motorcycles. Sorry, Go ahead, Chris.
I will say, it doesn't make sense that it's there, but the scene never bothered me.
Here's what
I don't
bothers
know,
me
it
about
seems
the
bother
scene.
you,
fun.
Ames. Yeah.
I got the thing, and that's that I find it gets boring because
It does go on too long.
It goes on too long, and it never escalates in any way.
Fair.
Except maybe
Well,
the
it
very,
kinda
very
does.
last moment.
No, it kind of does, because at first you kind of just think, oh, there's just one, and then suddenly there's a shitload of them. So I don't
That
think
happens
that
in the first second of there being a motorcycle. So he enters the little habitat area on motorcycle, and all he does is ride in circles for probably half an hour.
Well, yeah. I mean, the whole point is that he's
An
there
hour?
as a distraction so that McCoy and Spock can rescue everybody else.
And it goes on so long that every time they just cut to Pine motorcycling around, like you could fit that same shot anywhere in the whole scene, and it will be the same shot.
I'd say the one thing I do like about it is that it makes Kirk kind of the most superfluous member of the crew in that rescue.
You like
that's
that?
true, because
Why do you like that?
he's just like...
Well, because like it's
the
not Kirk
distraction, yeah.
saving the day, you know, because like you expect
it
in Star
is.
Trek that Kirk is going to be the one to save everybody, but
Yeah,
really,
but you would expect him to be the one flying the space flight thing as opposed to being the distraction, right? I mean,
yeah.
responding
it
to
kind of
Ames.
it gets to, I think, the larger theme we were talking about, like, you know, everyone's better together, and Kirk is part of a larger plan. And normally, especially with the movies, like so often the captain is the hero figure, and here it's like he's still heroic and he's still helping, but again, yeah, there's a larger thing happening and he's not necessarily the centerpiece. Like Spock and McCoy are off doing their thing and Jayla's having her fight. Like, I get what you're getting at.
And Scotty's, you know, beaming like a madman and getting everybody out of there.
Lassie.
Here's a question. So the moment they say, oh, what we're going to need is some kind of a distraction, Kirk says, I've got an idea. Look at motorcycle. But for that to work, he also needed the duplicator device, which he had not seen work yet.
I mean, maybe he was planning to just ride around in circles.
To just ride around and get shot a million times?
Jayla's like, you know what would make more sense to do? Like,
I've got this thing.
fucking this holograph machine. Yeah, it's unclear where Jayla gets all of this super advanced tech for like hollow duplicator and cloaking devices and all this other stuff.
And that ground freezing stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever this culture was that had inhabited this world seemed pretty advanced. So it might have been left over from them, like the Abernath.
Oh, that's a
I
good
mean,
point.
honestly, like, something that bothers me is that Edison, in order for this movie to work the way they've written it, which I don't think was great, as I've already said, like the fact that the villain doesn't really get a reveal until the end, is that why does Edison and his crew seemingly transform into monsters?
It's got to be because of the tech they're using, isn't it?
So-
I don't know, because when he uses the tech,
Because it seems like it's probably some kind of DNA thing.
he looks more human when he uses the tech, though.
But maybe when it wears
I don't
off,
know.
that's what
So
it does automatically.
this was a failing of the film because they don't make it
Well-
clear. But I remember reading a thing around that time. The idea was whenever he sucked energy out of someone, it kind of like stole some of
he
their
Kirby's.
DNA. Yeah. So like that,
he Kirby's.
and if you actually look, like less so him, but his little sidekick, parts of his head are very reminiscent of that henchwoman's head.
Yeah, the one that tried to, the one that first tricked them to go.
Yeah.
In the
So like he probably did actually like suck some of her people dry. And that's why once he starts sucking up the Enterprise people, he starts to look more human.
Oh,
But again,
interesting.
That's
interesting.
only clear because of something I read like later.
But the
film-
henchwoman was one of his original crew.
No,
Kalara?
Was she?
She was originally his science officer.
Really?
Oh.
That's not
That-
established in the movie. That's only established in
Yeah,
reading some
because
shit.
in the movie, but again, she's just a big dirty liar. Because she says that my ship crashed here, and then they stole my. Because I like, other than the rest of her story being actual bullshit, I kind of was taking that part at face value that she was like the last survivor of a ship.
Yeah,
that
so
crashed.
had I. Yeah.
You're right. I mean, it does make sense that she would have been one of the 3 surviving crew members.
Well, that aside, then, yes, the point was that they were sucking DNA out of people, and the film never made that super clear. But yeah, that's why Edison starts to look more human once he starts sucking humans dry.
See, I assumed it was kind of like Ruafu. He looks better when he's gotten a treatment, sort of thing.
Yeah, no, it was something the film did not do a good job of getting across.
That's too bad. How hard would it have been to like just say that?
Well, they tried. They tried to show, not tell, but there wasn't enough showing for it to be obvious. So they meant well, but failed.
Well, it's just more evidence of how underwritten the villain was. I get it. The movie wasn't really about that, and that's fine. I think they could have been, if they didn't make it so, like, okay, maybe they do like Dragon's Teeth, right? Where it's like,
and the cryo people.
The cryo people, where instead of being an Starfleet crew that crashed and went mad, what if it's just like this ancient civilization that has all of this amazing technology that has been stranded on this planet for hundreds or thousands of years, and they've been luring ships and things here just to basically do what Kroll's been doing, which is trying to get technology that'll allow them to reassert themselves as dominant in the galaxy. Like, hey, hell, make them fucking Iconians, right? Like,
they're never giving you the Iconians, Jake.
They never will. I know. But like, seriously, like, that's a very common theme in Star Trek, where you have like ancient species that had like superior technology that have been wiped out due to war. It's established in the teaser that this weapon is an ancient weapon from an ancient war. So why not just make it so that Kroll and his crew are just that? I mean, you can still have the Franklin as a ship that crashed on this planet.
Yeah.
And you know, you lose some of the intrigue of like, but again, they didn't bother with the intrigue anyway, so it wasn't important.
Yeah, there's something interesting in it being a Star Trek or Starfleet person who went kind of mad and started hating Starfleet, but they didn't do enough with it to make it worth it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it would have worked just as well if it was just ancient civilization, Dragon's Teeth. We're gonna take back the galaxy that was taken from us.
As a base idea, though, that is pretty good. Like, you know, what does happen in the transition from the Starfleet we saw in Enterprise to the Starfleet we know from TOS, or at least the Kelvin version of TOS. And it's like, it would have been nice, because again, I think all the villains in all three of the Kelvin films have been very throwaway. Even Khan. The most interesting thing about Khan was the bizarre shit fucking Cumberbatch did with his mouth. Like, it gave such an unhinged fucking performance that it's interesting. It also it's kind of a bummer that you waste an actor as good as Idris Elba under all that makeup and having to talk in such a stilted way so that it's not clear that he actually is a very good actor, because he's too busy trying to sound like he doesn't know the language or has mostly forgotten it.
Yeah, I was thinking that it was really a shame that he, like, just sounded that way, too. I mean, obviously, it's always a shame to lose the good looks of Mr. Alba as well, but, yeah, the fact that he had to sound so stilted, it was definitely... Yeah. I was bummed out.
They had Idris Elba, they kind of wasted him.
Very much.
Okay, the other stupid thing in this movie, and again, I say this
just one other thing.
Who likes this movie?
It's probably
so the problem is that this is perhaps one of the stupidest things in all of Star Trek, in my opinion.
Oh, that's saying something.
I know.
Green symbols.
Classical music.
Oh, you didn't like the classical music?
I fucking hated that.
Is that the line?
Do you hate that more or less than the fucking medieval West or whatever, ancient West?
I think it's fine.
I think the editing of that scene is really good.
Yeah, it was a great.
Oh my god, yes!
It looked really cool. It's a callback, obviously, to 2009. That Kirk's a fan of BC Boys, but and Sabotage, it's a cool song. I love hearing it.
And they are sabotaging this fleet. It's actually literally what they're doing.
And it's a badass scene, and it's totally taken down by, is that classical music? Because that wouldn't be fucking called classical music. Classical music is already a thing, and it would still be a thing in that time. It's not. We don't call classical music classical. Yeah, it's like the ancient West. It's on that level of stupid.
No, here's the thing. Two things. One, Ancient West is still dumber because, as I said at the time, the distance between the Old West and the 24th century, not long enough to be considered ancient. This is going from late 20th century music to the late 23rd century, about 300 years, and music 300 years ago we call classical. So that's not as much of a stretch. Now, different genre, I agree. We are already, as a culture, falling into the trap, though, of calling anything beyond a certain age classical, even if it, like, isn't technically part of what was initially defined as the classical era. So there was a slim but non-zero chance that could happen. Like, sometimes you'll even see
stuff... When does classic rock start, Chris? When is the most recent classic rock?
I think stuff as late as the early 90s is now getting considered classic rock.
No.
They definitely play
Do they?
90s music on the classic rock stations on
but, like,
radio.
That's scary.
We're at the point where anything that is strictly instrumental, people will call classical, even if it's like fucking Rhapsody in Blue, which is the 1920s.
No, I mean, to be fair, like, fucking John Williams scores are called classical.
Which is not at all what that means.
Right.
It just means orchestra.
Classical music is more of a style that encompasses it's just, I think the style of orchestral music is broadly considered classical.
Yeah, but
there's contemporary classical music, which is like stuff that's being composed today, and which you could, I would say, fairly call like a John Williams score a contemporary classical thing, especially since it's incredibly derivative of everything else.
Yeah.
Because John Williams, as talented as he is, has never had an original thought in his head.
No.
But you're not wrong.
But yeah, so anyway, it's the line. It is just the line. I think, and they knew what they were doing. It's not, they weren't trying to, they knew what they were doing. They were looking to make a joke that the audience would be like, the future
and it has
thinks
to come out of
Beastie Boys
McCoy. The only way it works is if McCoy says it, too.
I mean, it could actually work if Spock said it. It would actually make more sense if Spock said it, because he's probably less attuned to Earth culture.
Yeah.
And maybe to Spock, he does think that just any old music is classical, versus McCoy, who could be like, I'd sooner have McCoy do the boomer, like, oh, what's that noise? Oh, sort of thing.
I could still see, though, I could see a point where, as a culture, because again, classical did used to mean something very specific, and you're right, it's morphed into this. I could see a non-zero chance where classical just becomes a catch-all for anything pre-World War III. And also, I still argue Ancient West is infinitely dumber than calling Beastie Boys classical. Because again,
Ancient West is pretty damn
the
dumb.
time gap doesn't make sense. So dumb.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. Old, I think it's actually the same thing, though, right? Because we don't call the Old West the Ancient West not just because of the time gap. We call it the Old West because that's what it's called.
Well, yes, that too.
But we're not going to call, I don't know, I can't think of another example of something that we would just start calling old for no reason.
Classic West.
Like, I'm sure
England.
They called it the Old West not long after it was just the West, right?
Yeah, well, that's when you think about it, like, it was already at the very least the Old West by the 1950s.
Yeah,
but
the movies
I mean,
and stuff.
The West, as we think of it, I mean, shit, you look at Red Dead Redemption, and like, that looks very Old Western, but that's set in around 1910?
Huh.
Because the West was still, even though it was more settled by then, and that's a huge theme of the game, is like the end of the Old West was still in the early 20th century.
I mean, I think the Old West really just refers to the time period when these places were kind of lawless.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
You know, the untamed West is probably more apt, but it's also tied up in all of, a lot of like cultural bullshit and
it gets
shitty stuff that we did to the
Native
people
American
who lived there.
Yeah, it's impossible to do an objective American Western because either it is working within the tropes or actively trying to deconstruct them.
Yeah. But anywho, I actually do really like the Beastie Boys scene. I think
it's fun.
It's fun. It makes sense. They explain it well, what it's doing.
Yep.
Yeah, they set up a lot of things really well. Like, they set up all of, like, Jayla's traps all pay off.
Yeah.
Everything Jayla brings up all pay off. The MacGuffin thing even pays off when you don't expect it to. You expect the teaser to be this throwaway thing of just like, Kirk is getting jaded about being in space, and you know it's episodic, he says, which is very very tongue in cheek because I guess like there are a lot of like comics and stuff that kind of fill in what was happening in this era.
Yeah,
but it pays off, and that's good writing. Holy shit.
You know what's a good payoff in this movie, speaking of payoffs?
Yeah?
Is that when the scene with Bones where he goes to have a drink with Kirk and he says that he stole the
Scotch?
The scotch from Chekhov's locker.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
And then the payoff of that doesn't happen until the very last scene when Chekhov drops the old, "Did you know that scotch was invented in Russia by a
that's
little
great.
man?" It's like
that's so good.
So
and that's
like,
a direct callback to the Tribbles.
Yeah.
A couple of Tribbles.
Yeah.
I do wish it had been Leningrad, but I get it, because in reality, he's talking to an alien woman. She's barely going to know what Russia is, never mind Leningrad.
I'm sure she doesn't know what Russia is, and she's
True.
just like, why is this goofy man talking to me?
Because he's adorable. Let him.
He is.
I loved, it's corny as shit, but I loved Spock looking at the picture of the Star Trek 6 publicity shot.
Oh, good. I
I
wanted to bring this up because I remember when I first saw this movie feeling like not knowing how I feel about that, because it feels so much like they're just kind of addressing that Nimoy died, and they found a way to get it in there so that the audience could have a sad. But also it's a way for like this Spock to have a sad. So it also works in the plot, but I still feel like I'm being emotionally manipulated.
Oh, you absolutely are. It's not
Yeah.
Just showing a picture of that cast, period, is an emotional manipulation.
Oh, for sure.
But I think
half of them were gone by then, right? I mean,
I think
McCoy
at this time,
and Nimoy and Scotty, of course.
The three of them were all gone. Yeah, Nichelle was still around.
Oh,
Obviously,
yeah, I
Takei
forgot about
and
poor Nicole.
Walter and Shatner are still around.
Nichelle,
So, yeah.
Nichelle Nichols. Poor thing.
Yeah, I think it's because like it's weird because it still does kind of it like, because in the first film his whole thing is like, I should probably leave Starfleet because my people are dying, and old Spock is like, you can be in two places at once now. But now he can't. So you can kind of see how, and he was already having doubts even when he thought Spock was alive, we know, but now old Spock was alive. Now he's especially like, well, fuck, now I'm actually in one place at once again.
Well, here's the thing, though. Also included in that letter, we learned that old Spock did enough fucking for the both of them.
Oh, Jesus.
There's a lot of little Spocklings running around now.
But it weirdly works because of stuff they did in the first film, not knowing this was going to happen.
Right.
And I think also, again, he's considering leaving, and then he sees this sort of potential future. So, I mean, it is obviously, yes, they're trying to grab you by the hairs and go like, aren't you sad? And you go, yes, fuck you. But it still also does weirdly work thematically and as part of the story.
Yeah,
and if they're gonna manipulate me, at least they did it reasonably tastefully.
That's true.
Yeah.
They did. They didn't, and then also like the scene in which Spock looks at the old photo has no lines, which is again them doing a great job not beating you over the head with. Do you get it? Do you fucking get it?
This is how you make a movie, JJ.
If Spock's arc over this movie is he starts off the movie not expecting to leave Starfleet, he has an adventure, and then he determines he's going to stay with Starfleet.
To be with Bones.
Okay, that I accept. But that I accept because the two of them, they had a little scene together where they basically said, I love you, and I squeed hard.
Yeah.
You don't have to say it.
Yeah, but that whole middle chunk of the movie, you don't really see what has changed in Spock, except that he saw a photograph.
Yeah, well, and also, there's the moment where Kirk goes, what would I do without you, Spock? And he looks like thoughtful.
Well, that's at the end, like the very end.
Yeah, but it's still during the adventure.
Yeah, fair enough.
So he's like, oh, I have friends. What am I doing?
Yeah.
And this piece of ass, who I put a radioactive necklace on.
I thought that was pretty funny.
Or
You
weird
put a
guy
tracking
Spock.
device on your girlfriend. Like, oh, or you gave a woman a tracking device.
What I appreciate... Sorry, I thought you were done.
No, that was it.
What I appreciate is, like, we're talking about kind of some of the gross shit in the first one with Spock and Uhura's relationship. Whereas with this one, it is specifically pointed out, it's like, it's not something he meant to do. He just gave her a piece of Vulcan, which, considering Vulcan is gone, is actually really fucking sweet.
And then he wouldn't even take it back.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, they're like, so you gave her a tracking device? And he pauses and is like, I mean, that's not what I meant.
Oops.
Like, that wasn't like, he wasn't regularly checking up on her with it. He just realized he'd accidentally handed them this thing. And it's...
Yeah, it's like giving a small child a smartphone so that you can, always communicate with it. But also it has GPS on it so you can find them.
Yeah, but even then, a parent actively knows that. He wasn't thinking. He has this moment of, wait a minute, she's got that distinct item.
She's got that thing I sent her.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of women in this and how underused they are, Carol Marcus is just gone.
That's fine.
Yeah.
She was barely actually in the... How much did we talk about her last week?
Very little. Mostly the underwear scene, which is upsetting.
Listen, she's going to be happier as a scientist or whatever. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Jayla is an infinitely better character.
True,
oh my god,
like
I love Jayla. I had forgotten what a huge lady boner I had about Jayla, and
I think
it was not disappointed. This was great.
What's great about Jayla is she's a person first, not just a woman.
She
and we never see her. Huh? Sorry, what?
Who, me or Ames?
I didn't hear either of you. Sorry.
Oh, I said highly competent.
Highly competent, and I said she has an actual character arc.
And we never see her in her underwear.
And we never see her underwear.
We never see her, and like beyond that, like there's no romance subplot with her.
Although I do ship her and Scotty hard.
Oh, big time.
Well, everyone does, but
everyone does. I don't care.
But that's the thing. Like that's not the point. Like you can have this movie show that yes, you can have a female character in a movie and have her interact with male characters.
Yeah.
And
fully clothed
and without any romance subplot.
Yeah.
Take notes.
That thing, and I don't even ship her and Scotty. I think of their relationship as much more like I ship them as like super best friends forever. Like maybe like a surrogate brother almost.
Yeah, everyone knows it's Scotty and Keezer or whatever.
Weird.
With his
Keezer gets a good moment this movie.
Yeah, the sneeze.
Yeah.
He gets
which was also set up.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. There was Chekhov, like there was Chekhov's sneeze. There was Chekhov's MacGuffin. There was so many things they actually set up first.
Man, Peg's gotta write more of these fucking movies.
If they actually do more, fuck, why not?
Yeah,
I will say one thing that it did. This is a production issue I had. The woman, the subterfuge woman,
the crab-headed woman.
Well, no, right? Well, that's the thing, right? So that's my complaint, is that the crabhead lady and the lady that tricks them into going to the planet in the first place.
Kalara.
Oh, very similar.
They look too much alike.
I thought the same thing.
They both have, like, bulbous heads.
Yep.
You can't do that.
Whoever did the makeup on this, because remember, the woman Chekhov is talking to at the end has, like, almost a conch shell for a head.
Yeah,
whoever did the alien design for this really liked bulbous heads.
They did. I have a note on that, in fact. The note is, this was nominated for an Emmy in makeup and hairstyling, which I wrote down in my notes, why is makeup and hairstyling one category when it could easily be two?
Why is it getting nominated for an Emmy when it's a movie?
Did I write down the wrong thing? I may have written on the wrong thing.
Oh, was it supposed to be Golden Globe?
It was probably an Oscar, and I just wrote down the wrong thing.
Globe, yeah.
But also, we didn't bring up, back when we covered 2009, that 2009 won that category.
Really?
Oh, shit.
That's impressive, because, it had some... Yeah, it wasn't bad. I guess when I think about this one, I feel like it had more interesting aliens, but yeah, that one did fine.
Yeah. Yeah, the costumer also, I think, needed to do a different cut on Greg Grunberg's uniform, because he looked kind of sausagey in that.
What does he look sausagey in?
Well, I don't know. I just think like a different...
For who?
They could have dressed him more flatteringly than they did.
Cupcake?
No. The guy, he played he was like the captain of Yorktown or whatever. I don't know what his job was.
He was, in fact, Kelvin Timeline Finnegan.
Is that who you're supposed to be?
Yes.
That makes no sense.
It does not.
He doesn't have an Irish accent.
Yeah,
nope.
That's the whole point of Finnegan. He was, yeah,
Literally.
but he's kind of a big guy. He's kind of
Mm-hmm.
a big guy, and they dressed him in this uniform that was too small, and it didn't work.
Did they give him Admiral Patrick bitch tits? I didn't notice.
Not that bad.
No, they didn't show enough of him, but they showed enough that you're like, not
it was
not the best costuming choice.
It was a stiffer material. I mean, the ultimate thing is like, a jumpsuit is something that looks good on very few. Like, the minute you're even slightly overweight, you look bad in a form-fitting jumpsuit.
I'm gonna disagree with that, because I have seen someone who wears a jumpsuit who is considered overweight, who is stunning. I think it has to do more with the proportion of your body than how heavy you are. There's like got to be a ratio of some kind that you have to fulfill to make it look right.
Yeah, I mean, form-fitting jumpsuits don't look... I mean, look at the first 2 seasons of TNG. Those don't look good on most people. Like, jumpsuits need to be slack a little to... Like, the Enterprise jumpsuits worked way better on more people because they weren't, like, hugging every fucking inch of them.
Yeah,
well, in TNG, they were also wearing, like, pec suits underneath.
That's right, I forgot about that stupidity.
Is that true? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Well, I forgot all about it. And,
but it'd be like
very sorry
like,
to be back here remembering it now.
These Are the Voyages. Riker wearing one of those jumpsuits would have been bad.
I mean, fucking even young goddamn Will Riker. What is his real name?
Frakes.
Jonathan Frakes. I can't remember anyone's name today. Jonathan Frakes, like, he looked so uncomfortable in his TNG jumpsuit in seasons 1. I mean, because their backs.
Well, they
were
all were,
killing
weren't
them.
they?
Yeah,
well,
they literally had back
and they also
pain.
had like apparently they were hard to clean, so they always kind of smelled like BO.
Oh, yeah. Gross! Come on.
There were myriad issues.
I forget if I talked about. I've read an interview recently with Stewart where he was saying part of the reason they changed the uniforms because his doctor was like, "These are fucking you up," and he was like, "You are changing these, or I quit." My doctor said so.
Well, because they were spandex, so they were already stretched. So that would mean that like they were like wearing compression garments on your whole body.
Yeah.
Eesh.
So yeah, these ones were not as bad because they were still cut tight, but they weren't skin tight.
Yeah. But anyway,
These are the
and Greg
Yorktown
Grunberg previously had a
outfits?
voice cameo we talked about in 2009 as Kirk's stepdad, right?
Yes, and I meant the Yorktown ones, Ames.
Okay.
Yeah, he was Kirk's stepdad voice in 2009.
So, I think he's just a bad robot guy.
Well, he's a childhood friend of J.J. Abrams.
Yeah.
So he's in everything J.J. touches.
Was he?
Although weirdly,
Lost?
Oh, I know he was in Lost.
He was in Heroes.
I think he's the pilot of the airplane in Lost.
Oh, that would make sense. That seems like a him role.
Although, weirdly, I don't think he's in Into Darkness anywhere.
You know, speaking of people at the Yorktown, I wrote in my notes by the very, very end when we get a great scene with her, not enough Shorey. Because Commodore Paris has, like, bookendy scenes with Kirk talking about doing the desk job shit. And wasn't she added, like, after principal filming when they realized they needed somebody, or what happened there?
My understanding is they either added her or at least a lot of her scenes with Kirk were added. Because she is there when they're interrogating the alien woman. So unless they reshot that scene to put her in, which they may have. Because, yeah, I feel like she definitely was, I remember reading, like, her whole little stuff with Kirk was definitely after principal photography.
That's wild.
So, yeah, if she wasn't already there for the scene for the interrogation, they had to have reshot that to add her.
It seems possible, because that's not hard to reshoot that shit, I don't think.
Yeah, probably not.
But
yeah, they felt like
CG her in.
Yeah, I remember reading, like, they felt like his arc was a little weak, and they added the scenes with Commodore Paris.
Oh, yeah, they absolutely needed those scenes, because otherwise he has no arc.
Yeah, like, I mean, outside of his, like, log entry, like, this just re-emphasizes that.
Well, I love her, and I will always love Shorey Agdashlu, who is amazing.
Yeah, she's great in whatever she shows up in. Distinct voice, too. I caught it in a trailer for a video game once, and I was like, I know exactly who that is, and looked her up, and like, yep, it was her. And she's in some big... Right, thank you. She's in some big sci-fi thing.
Oh, yeah, she's the fucking best in The Expanse.
Actually, she's also... Isn't she in... She might be in Renfield.
Which is what?
Oh, awesome movie.
This bizarre and wonderful comedy Dracula film that came out last year. Where
only last year?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's like the modern day, and it's really like they sort of work it so that it's from Renfield's sort of perspective, and it's about like codependent abusive relationships, but framed as like, you know, Dracula and his subordinate.
It's so good, dude. I
am explaining it so badly.
I cannot recommend it. No, it's absolutely right. It's basically like Renfield is in a codependent relationship with Dracula, and at first he starts going to like a support group so he can like get some pathetic little humans to give to Dracula, and then he realizes, holy shit, I'm in a codependent relationship, and decides he's gonna fix his life. And of course Dracula shows up to fuck it up. Will he win?
But also she's in that. She's the head of like a crime family that is
holy shit, that's her?
Yep. She's part of the subplot. Oh god, what's his name? Anyway, very good movie, very funny.
Very good. And you get just as much Dracula as you need.
They use Nick Cage just enough. Like, they hit the exact sweet spot of enough Nick Cage.
It's very easy to get too much Nick Cage.
It is.
And once you put too much Nick Cage in, you can't get it out. You know?
And yet somehow in that adaptation, you got 2 Nick Cages, and it still doesn't feel like enough. Needs more Nick Cages.
I still have to see that.
That's a great
movie.
I've
never seen it
I've heard. But Star Trek.
I also read...
Star Trek could use some Nick Cage.
I wouldn't be opposed.
He recently said in an interview...
goofball villain, you know?
He has said he wants to be in Star Trek someday. So
hell yeah.
He said that recently. So, like, guys, get the fuck on it.
Yeah.
So I read somewhere that the role of Jayla was originally written with Jennifer Lawrence in mind, and that's why her name is
Jayla.
Basically J-Law.
Wow.
Oh, no.
For a second I thought you were going to say J-Lo, and I was like, they really wanted to get Sha'Carri, but...
I was saying, it's Sha'Carri all over again.
I don't see Jennifer Lawrence in that role.
No, I'm sort of really glad that she didn't work out, because it would have been a totally different character, and it wouldn't have been as good. Not that I don't like Jennifer Lawrence. She's a fine actress.
Yeah, no, I think Jennifer Lawrence is fine. I just don't.
But Jayla kicks ass.
Working here, yeah.
Amusingly,
well, it also may have been a totally different character then too. Like if they wrote it for her, it might have been
and this is probably
softer.
Also, I feel like I don't know when it happened, but there was certainly a point in time where there was like Jennifer Lawrence overload, and like she was just in everything and kind of became a meme.
Oh yeah.
Like if this was sort of more like when they were writing this part, if this was more like the height of the Hunger Games era of Jennifer Lawrence, maybe
probably
because she could kind of do that like Katniss thing, where it was just kind of a badass.
Wasn't she? What else was she in? Wasn't she like Emma Frost or some shit in First Class?
No, she was the shapeshifter.
Mystique.
Yes, thank you. So amusingly, because Michael Giacchino,
Odo?
Michael Giacchino loves like goofy titles for his music tracks in films. One of them is called Mocking Jayla, so he still referenced it even in there, even though by then it was...
That's cute, Mocking
Sophie
Jayla.
Botella. Yeah, no, he loves his goofy little titles. There's
that's great.
All sorts. Although, big fuck you to Disney, they don't let him do that. So in his score for Rogue One, in his, like, CD liner notes, he literally put down the track names he would have used if Disney weren't Killjoys. So, fuck you, Disney. Get the cork out of your ass.
Yeah, and that was classical music, that soundtrack, I believe.
Yes. Actually, since we're talking about it too, we're talking about references. One of the subtlest in the whole thing, I'm not sure why he chose to do it here, but fuck it, why not? He definitely repeatedly quotes Ilya's theme from the motion picture in this one.
Huh.
Which is funny, because one of the posters for this film was very much the TMP poster.
Yeah, I noticed that. I saw, that's a pretty good poster,
that
too.
Is a good poster.
It is. But yeah, it's Kirk, Jayla, and I think Spock, maybe, on this one. Yeah. Yeah, I love his work. Again, like, all 3 films, if nothing else, have a great score. All 3 are him. He's done some work. He did the theme for Prodigy. He doesn't do the music for Prodigy, but he wrote the theme. He's very good.
Yeah, I will say this is the one of the 3 movies, the 3 Kelvin movies, that held up exactly as I expected it to. Like, 2009, not nearly as good as I remembered. Into Darkness, much better than I remembered. I mean, while still being amazing, but still, like, this one was exactly as I recalled, it was, yes, there are problems, but like it was a good time. Jayla was just as cool as I remembered. Her relationship with Scotty was just as great as I remembered. Like, I don't know. I just had a great time.
Well,
and now, as someone who has an even bigger appreciation for a little Doc/Spock Enos, I thought that was great too.
Yeah, and I think the kind of tragedy of that is, so I think this is the movie that has, of the 3 Kelvin movies, that has done the best with reviewers and with Star Trek fans, but the worst with the general populace.
Aww.
Because
makes sense.
Because it's more like a Star Trek kind of feeling to it. Like, it feels like it's got that optimism. It's got, you know, embracing the teamwork, embracing the ideals of the Federation, which isn't what the general populace was about. Like, I think a lot of people said after this movie, like, yes, this is why Star Trek is better as a TV show. Because if you're trying to make a movie for the fans, with the budget of these movies, you're not going to do as well as, like, a general crowd pleaser.
I mean, I think you could even say that, like, they kind of proved that years ago. Yeah, Star Trek does work better as a show, just in general. Like, when they try to go more Star Trek-y, and even TMP was an attempt to just be TOS, but with way more money, and people went, what the
Too much
fuck is this?
Well, and I also think this is the first of the Star Trek movies to have released after the Star Wars sequel trilogy began, right? So this was 2016.
Right.
And we had already had Force Awakens by this time. So I feel like, as compared to the other movies where there wasn't a ton of like space sci-fi, I mean, there certainly wasn't any like space sci-fi franchise stuff happening. Star Trek kind of scratched that itch for people, and because those movies were more Star Wars-y, I think that's part of the reason why they had a broader appeal.
Yeah.
But now we have Star Wars.
Yeah. Like, JJ left this production, he didn't direct this, so he could be working on Star Wars.
Thank God. Thank fucking God. Thank God. He can go ruin
but now, like, the
Last
audience
Skywalker.
is kind of like, they've now seen Star Wars, and now they go into this, and they're like, okay, well, I was kind of expecting something more like that, so what the fuck is this?
Well, also, it's very much in that era where, like, genre stuff has become basically mainstream at this point. Like, the MCU was in full swing, like, Star Wars was back, like, like, people like Abrams who'd grown up on this shit, the geeks had taken over mainstream Hollywood, so there's just, even if it's not explicitly space opera, there's just still so much more out there for the genre world. And even by then you'd had, like, the first Guardians of the Galaxy, which also has Zoe Saldana in it. And she's an Avatar. Like, so yeah, there's suddenly, like you said, like, Star Wars is there, Marvel's doing some space shit, other people are trying to get a piece of that pie, so...
Pie.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though. I think, part of the problem is that they want to do Star Wars. I mean, they can only really do Star Trek as a big budget action movie if they're going to do it at all at this point.
Yeah.
Like, you can't do a plotting fucking, TMP style film.
No.
I don't even think you can get away with something as, quote unquote cerebral as like a Star Trek 6 or a First Contact at this point. Like, they're just not on par in terms of like the action and set pieces that you get in a Marvel or Star Wars
But
film.
if you do another big budget movie, you're not gonna make enough of that back to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the problem, is like that's kind of encapsulating the entire problem with Hollywood at this point, is that you have two types of movies now. You have like cheaply made films that are, maybe goods, like art house type stuff, stuff that's going to be kind of niche from the get-go, but it's okay because they're cheap to produce, and they'll make enough back end on DVD and streaming that they'll pay for themselves. Then there's nothing in the middle, and then at the high end you have the big budget movies that have to make $800 million or $1 billion just to break even. And like Star Trek isn't that. Like Star Trek's not making $1 billion on a movie. It's certainly not a good Star Trek movie.
The thing is,
And
the studio heads have always, like, Paramount doesn't understand Star Trek, and they've always wanted Star Wars level returns from Star Trek movies, and they don't understand that will never happen.
Yeah, they can't even get Star Wars level returns on Star Wars so much anymore.
Now,
they've given up movies for Star Wars too, because they're like, oh, we have to do shows, and I think that's fine. I think Star Trek generally works better as a show. I think we don't need big budget Hollywood movies for Star Trek. I'm fine with it living on the small screen. And like honestly, the one, not even, it's not, I don't think it's going to be a theatrically released film. Maybe it will be, but the movie that they're doing for Michelle Yeoh,
that's straight to streaming.
Yeah, I think it's straight to streaming, but they might do like a theatrical release.
Oh, maybe.
They sometimes do, like, a small release.
Minimum required screens to be like award worthy
exactly.
or whatever.
I wouldn't be surprised if they do that, but it's certainly not something that's going to be on the level of a something like this, right? It's a small budget, relatively speaking. It's still hugely expensive, I'm sure, but
looks terrible.
It looks absolutely insufferable. I'm not.
No, it looks like what if Star Trek did Guardians of the Galaxy,
and yet we're gonna have to watch it for this very podcast.
No, sucks. I was gonna say, Jake, it's interesting too because you talking about this because I remember while watching this film, and thinking about the fact that I've known because I've read other things about this about how expensive it's getting to make movies. The number of production company logos at the start of this film is insane.
Oh yeah,
and it's like companies you've never fucking heard of. Like, who the fuck are Alibaba Films?
Yeah, I was like, is that the fucking, like, that Alibaba, like the company
AliExpress?
AliExpress, yeah.
It's entirely possible.
Like,
I don't know.
That's like a Chinese conglomerate. Are they like investing in films?
Yes. A huge amount of Hollywood money now is coming from Chinese conglomerates. It's really becoming the only way to... It's interesting because the issue you're seeing here with films is also an issue... It's really an issue with media across the board. Things are either very small and indie, or they are overpriced madness that will almost never make their money back. Like, there's been a lot of discussion even in the video game space about how there's nothing in the middle. There used to be the so-called double-A game, something made by a big-ish studio, but on a less obscene budget. It's a smaller game, it's not as over-the-top, and it would usually, make its money back easily enough. And so the double-A game doesn't exist. The mid-range movie doesn't exist. It's like, who is it? The guy from Wedding Crashers was recently saying, like, they don't really make mid-budget comedies anymore because they aren't sure they're going to make the money, but they make these sort of bland big-budget ones in the hopes that it'll definitely get returns. Like, there's been a major failing of media in general. Like, even fucking music now is becoming so expensive that it's hard to make it as a band. Capitalism's fucking art in the biggest way it ever has, and that's saying something because it has always fucked art.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess the lesson here is that I would not be surprised, even though they keep saying that they're going to do number 4, I don't know. This might be the last of the Star Trek big screen, big budget, blockbuster adventures that we get.
And honestly...
And I'm okay with it.
Yeah, at least they're going out on a high note. I'd be bummed if they went.
I would love to see that Tarantino movie. I'd love if that existed.
Yeah, but I mean that's dead and buried though, right? Like that was
years ago.
Theoretical. Yeah. Anyway, getting back to this, I think have we officially caught up with ourselves? Is this the last piece of Star Trek media that was released before we started our podcast?
It is, because we debuted on the 50th anniversary, and this was July 22nd, 2016. So yeah, we're 3 months after this is when we started this podcast.
Yeah, and then Discovery wouldn't be released until the following year.
Wow, I did not realize I did it that fast. Because here's the thing. I saw this movie, and this made me think, I should give Enterprise another chance, because I only ever saw the first season. And I started watching Enterprise and thought, I should do a podcast where I watch all of Star Trek with people. I did not realize it was that close to this coming out. So yes, anyone listening, it's this movie's fault. Or it's thanks to this movie, depending on how much I annoy you.
Well, I'm for one glad that you saw this movie, because now we get to talk about Star Trek.
I'm glad we all saw this movie.
Yeah, no, yeah, and again, if this is the last Star Trek film, or at least even if it's just the last Kelvin one, because they keep threatening to do like a theatrical, they're now threatening to do like a theatrical like movie based sometime after Enterprise, but before TOS. I don't know why. But again, at least if this really is the end of the Kelvin timeline, it went out on a high note.
Yeah.
Star Trek should just.
I agree. I think this is definitely the best of the three.
Yep.
And it's honestly probably better than a good number of the rest of the Star Trek films.
Everything but First Contact in terms of TNG.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
this is probably. I would say this is pretty First Contact light in terms of its like feel goodingness.
Yeah.
Which is a word now.
Yeah, I probably have more issues with this movie than I do with First Contact, but at the same time, most of my issues are, what I talked about. I think the villain, totally underwritten, would have loved.
Yeah, but that's just a theme of this trilogy.
Yeah, exactly. And but overall, perfect 5 out of 7.
Yeah. Oh, you know what we haven't mentioned yet is something I wanted to bring up, is that in this movie, it's portrayed that the Sulu character is gay.
Yeah.
Something that I guess George
Takei did not like it.
Didn't like it. And he has an interesting quote that basically like it makes it seem like his character all throughout the original series is closeted, which is something that he himself isn't comfortable considering. That's how he that's something that it would be like built on top of the character that he's portrayed for many years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, also it's interesting because the only reason I'm sure they did it is because of George Takei himself being gay. Like if like that's and like everyone had always kind of joked, like it had always been kind of a joke that Sulu's gay. He's when he had the sword, and it's like it was like kind of a gross, disrespectful joke that people made. For many years, and now we're gonna make it canon.
Yeah, they meant well. Again, they wanted to sort of pay tribute to George Takei. And actually, if you do look at Star Trek, like the original universe, I mean, again, they maybe should have just gone with what he requested because, again, it's him. But like, there is actually nothing canonically in the original timeline that he's straight. The closest we get is that time Doc unloads those Vegas showgirls on him, and he looks very happy. But aside from that, like, I think Sulu might be the only character, like, because even Chekhov had a girlfriend that one time. Scotty had shown interest in. I don't think they ever showed Sulu like being anything more than friendly with women. Ames has a finger up. I'm forgetting something.
One. It's in TAS, The Magics of Vegas 2.
Oh, TAS doesn't fucking count. Nothing live action, which is what most people know. So, like, it's not as much of a stretch. But again, considering they did ask him about it beforehand, he said, maybe don't. They should have maybe not.
Yeah, and like,
they should have maybe don't.
I don't have any qualms with, I think it's a positive thing because
it is.
That is something that's somewhere that Star Trek has historically struggled. Is this the first like on-screen gay couple in Star Trek?
And they're totally excitable,
I think so.
too.
In 2016, 50 years after the thing started. So yeah, so it's about damn time. For sure.
Yeah.
It is a little uncomfortable that it's Sulu because of that, what you just said about George Takei, and just the fact that if like they didn't take a character, they only made it Sulu because it was George Takei. Like they could have easily done it with Chekhov instead, and whatever.
Yeah. I mean, and even then, if it just makes, Chekhov is with women in the original, it's like, well, maybe Chekhov's bisexual then.
Yeah.
Fuck it.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
it's the
Gene would
future.
love it.
Speaking as one of 3 people to portray Chekhov, I can definitely tell you that Chekhov is in fact bisexual.
Love that for him.
You heard it here first, folks.
And yes, I am.
No, you really want to fucking go nuts. Make it Kirk. There you go.
Oh, Kirk would fuck anything for sure.
They have made that argument all over the place until Shatner feels uncomfortable, which makes me laugh.
I mean, the fact that the term slash fiction, like that whole genre of fan fiction, came from Kirk, Spock, slash, is like,
and this film franchise just reinvigorated it.
Oh yeah. Although in this movie, it's clearly going to be McCoy, Spock, slash.
It always was for me.
even in the show, it kind of goes back and forth between who Spock really wants to fuck. I think the movie settled pretty firmly on Kirk.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially in, that scene in sickbay in the motion picture where he's like, this is what's important. He's like holding Kirk's hand real tight, and you're just like, yeah, I get it.
What are we doing next?
Well, next week, we have, as Jake said, caught up to ourselves. We have also caught up to the Captains documentary, wherein William Shatner self-inserts himself into Star Trek history again and talks to his various counterparts, including Chris Pine.
Ooh, all the captains.
Yeah. Well, that existed at that point. So yes, before we dive headlong into stuff we've all already seen, which is going to make talking about it a very different dynamic, we're going to do a little 10 forward buffer where we watch The Captains. So join us for that. That'll be interesting. I've never seen this one. I don't think I've seen any of our documentaries going in, so here we go again. Hopefully it's better than Chaos on the Bridge.
Isn't this the one where Avery Brooks just goes off the fucking rail?
Probably, because I don't think he's
Avery Brooks not off the rail. I don't think that man has a rail.
That's why he's so great.
Yeah.
But we'll find out. So join us for that next week. Follow us on Facebook and SoundCloud and Tumblr. The regular Blog activities will be back around Discovery time, I believe, but we've been giving Ames a break, and none of us have been energetic enough to fill the void. By which we mean we're just lazy fucks. Do follow us on your favorite podcasting application. And until then... Oh, shit! I almost forgot!
Oh, God!
Shit.
Oh,
Farts,
Lassie! Your Lassie
butts,
count!
ass.
The count! I cannot guarantee I didn't miss any, but I'm pretty sure I got them all.
You could just bring up a transcript and say Control F. That's what I do.
Hold on.
This is my really shitty drum roll.
I thought you were typing. I was like, what's going on here? 1, 2... We've got 10 and a half.
What's the half?
At one point, rather than Lassie, he goes, Sheila, which is in a similar kind of generic...
That's not a Lassie.
That's Australian.
Either way, we've got 10 Lassies and 1 Sheila that I caught.
That seems lower than I thought it would be.
Yeah,
Right?
I'm also surprised.
Right? But yeah, this is this film that traded lens flares for Lassies.
Lens flares were counted in the hundreds, Chris.
Yeah, Simon Pegg has more of a sense of subtlety than J.J.
Yeah, one
Abrams.
Lassie is worth 100 lens flares.
Yes.
That's correct.
So the lens flares, I'm sure, were not written into the script. I'm sure that was more up to the editor and director's discretion.
I would kind of love if they were, though. Lens flare.
Yes. Anyway,
this has been Chad.
This has been Ames.
This has been Caitlin.
And this is always Jake.
Follow us on your favorite sound. Wow.